the voice that called my name. The first time I heard my name, I thought I was imagining it. It was past midnight, and the snowstorm outside had turned my neighborhood into a frozen wasteland. The wind howled through the trees, rattling against my windows like skeletal fingers. I had just settled into bed when I heard it. Soft, distant, yet unmistakably my own name. Aisha. I froze. My phone was on the nightstand, untouched. The TV was off. The only sound was the howling wind outside. But that voice, it was familiar. It sounded like me. I sat up, heart hammering against my ribs. The voice had come from outside. Maybe a trick of the wind, I told myself, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I climbed out of bed and tiptoed to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. The snow-covered street was empty. The streetlights flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows across the pavement. Then I heard it again. Aisha, open the door. My stomach twisted. The voice was closer now, right outside my house. My first instinct was to check the front door to make sure it was locked. As I reached the hallway, I hesitated. The voice was identical to mine, but stretched, distorted, like an old recording playing on a damaged tape. I stood there, breath shallow, listening. The snowfall outside muffled everything, but the voice was clear. Aisha, I know you can hear me. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I forced myself to move, stepping carefully over the creaky floorboards. My hands trembled as I checked the lock. It was secure. The chain was in place. Yet my own voice kept calling to me from the other side of the door. Let me in. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to think. Was someone messing with me? But how? My house was in the middle of nowhere. The nearest neighbor was 3 blocks away, and no one in their right mind would be outside in this storm. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. A long exhale slipped past my lips. Maybe I had imagined it after all. The lack of sleep was getting to me. With a shaky breath, I turned away, my fingers still clutching the doorknob. Then, the whisper came again. This time, it wasn't from outside. It was right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. The hallway was empty. The dim light from my bedroom cast a faint glow over the wooden floors, stretching my shadow against the walls. My pulse roared in my ears, my body frozen in place. The whisper came again, closer now. I see you. I bolted back to my room, slamming the door shut behind me. My hands fumbled for the light switch, but when the room illuminated, nothing was there. No one. Just me, standing in front of my mirror, chest heaving. And that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My reflection wasn't moving. I took a shaky step back, but the girl in the mirror remained still, staring at me with wide, empty eyes. A slow, unnatural smile stretched across her lips. My stomach lurched. This wasn't possible. My mind was playing tricks on me. I blinked rapidly, but the reflection stayed frozen, grinning. Then, in a voice that perfectly mimicked mine, it whispered, "Let me out." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. The room plunged into darkness, but the glow from the streetlights outside illuminated the mirror. And she was still there. Not just there, moving. Her hands pressed against the glass from the other side as if trying to push through. The longer I stared, the more wrong she looked. Her skin was too pale, her features slightly warped, like a drawing that had been smudged in the rain. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers barely working. The moment I turned the flashlight on, the reflection stopped. My real one returned, perfectly normal. My breath came in shallow gasps, my mind racing. Had I imagined it? I forced myself to move, grabbing the mirror and yanking it off the wall. I turned it around, shoving it face down against the floor. My heart pounded against my ribs as I backed away. Silence. For a long time, I just stood there listening to the storm outside. Minutes passed, then an hour. I was too afraid to sleep, but exhaustion eventually took over. I kept my phone's flashlight on, gripping it in my trembling hands as I curled up under the blankets. Just as my eyelids grew heavy, the whisper returned. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just my name. It was laughter. A soft, eerie giggle that slithered through the darkness. The light from my phone flickered. My body went rigid. The sound was coming from the floor, from the mirror. Slowly, against every instinct, I turned my head. The mirror was no longer face down. It was propped up against the wall. And the reflection in it? She wasn't me anymore. She was grinning, her head tilting at an unnatural angle. Her hands were reaching toward me, pressing against the inside of the glass. Her lips parted, revealing jagged teeth. Then in my own voice, she whispered, "You should have let me in." The light in my room went out. I never screamed. There was no time, because at that moment I felt it. A cold breath against the back of my neck. A hand, not mine, sliding over my shoulder. And the last thing I remember before everything went dark was the sound of my own voice, whispering in my ear, "Now I don't need the door." Story number 2. The Valentine's Mask. I woke up to the weight of something cold on my face. My breath hitched, my body freezing before my mind even registered what was happening. The room was dark, save for the dim glow of the street lamp filtering through the window. My fingers trembled as I reached up, feeling the rough texture of something strapped tightly around my head. A mask. My heart slammed against my ribs. I hadn't gone to bed wearing a mask. My fingers scrambled at the edges, but the leather straps were buckled tightly behind my head. The air inside the mask smelled stale, like old paper and something faintly metallic. My breaths came in short, panicked gasps as I stumbled out of bed and flicked on the lamp. The mirror across the room sent a wave of nausea rolling through my stomach. The mask covering my face wasn't one I had ever seen before. It was pale white, like porcelain, with hollow eye sockets and deep red smears running from the mouth, like blood had dripped from its lips. The design was intricate, almost ceremonial, the edges curling into delicate swirls. It looked handcrafted, but the most unsettling part, it fit my face perfectly. I turned around, scanning my bedroom. The door was locked. The windows were latched shut. There was no sign of a break-in, no disturbance, nothing to suggest that someone had been in my home. And yet, someone had put this mask on me while I slept. I yanked at the straps again, harder this time, my fingers raw from pulling. The buckle wouldn't budge. The leather felt almost fused together, as if it had been sewn into place. My pulse pounded in my ears. The mask had to come off. I rushed to the bathroom, gripping the sink for support. The sight in the mirror sent a cold shiver down my spine. The mask seemed even tighter now, as though it had molded itself to my skin. My eyes, barely visible through the hollow sockets, looked unfamiliar, wider, darker, filled with something that wasn't entirely mine. I turned on the tap, splashing cold water over my face. Nothing. I clawed at the edges again, my nails scraping against the rough texture. The mask refused to move. My skin beneath it burned, an itching sensation creeping along my jaw. Then I noticed something that made my breath catch. The red smears on the mask. They were fresh. A soft drip echoed in the silence. I looked down. A single drop of blood had fallen into the sink. My stomach clenched. I tilted my head forward, watching in horror as another drop slipped from the mask's lips, splattering against the porcelain. This wasn't paint. It was bleeding. I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the tile. My hands trembled violently as I grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling over the screen. I dialed the only person I could think of. Hello? Sarah's voice was groggy. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it was closing up. Sarah, something's wrong. There was a long pause. What do you mean? Are you okay? I swallowed hard, glancing at the mirror again. My reflection seemed off. The mask's hollow eyes were darker now, like they were sinking inward. I woke up with the mask on my face. I don't know where it came from. Sarah was silent for a moment. What? It won't come off, I whispered. It's stuck, and it's bleeding. Her voice sharpened. That's not funny. I'm not joking. A rustling sound on the other end. I'm coming over. The call disconnected. I gripped the sink, forcing myself to breathe. I needed to calm down. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe this was some kind of stress-induced breakdown. But then the whisper came. Soft, delicate, curling through the silence like smoke. You're not alone. I spun around so fast my vision blurred. My room was empty. My breath came in uneven gasps as I backed away from the mirror. The whisper came again. You let me in. The lights flickered. My knees buckled, and I caught myself against the doorframe. The room seemed colder now, the air thick with something I couldn't name. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing this nightmare to end. Then a knock at the door shattered the silence. I ran, nearly tripping over my own feet. I fumbled with the lock and yanked it open. Sarah stood there, bundled in a thick coat, her expression shifting from confusion to horror the second she saw me. Oh my God, she breathed. What the hell is that? I told you, I choked out. It won't come off. Sarah hesitated before stepping inside. She reached up, fingers grazing the edge of the mask. The second she touched it, she yanked her hand back with a sharp hiss. It's warm, she whispered. I swallowed hard. Sarah, please, help me get it off. She nodded, determination settling over her features. She guided me to the couch, grabbing a pair of scissors from the kitchen. Hold still. The metal blades glinted under the dim light. She slid them beneath the leather strap, applying pressure. The second the blade touched the strap, a shrill, piercing scream erupted from the mask. It wasn't coming from me. Sarah screamed, dropping the scissors as the lights flickered violently. I clutched my head, pain blooming behind my eyes like something was crawling inside my skull. The whisper returned, louder now, almost mocking. You can't take me off. I gasped, gripping Sarah's arm. Sarah, please. But her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. She stumbled back, pointing at me with a shaking hand. The mask, she stammered. It's smiling. My blood turned to ice. I ran to the bathroom, barely able to force myself to look at my reflection. But there it was. The mask's mouth had stretched into a wide, inhuman grin. Tears burned in my eyes. My fingers curled into fists. What do you want? I whispered. The answer came, slow and deliberate. You. The lights cut out. A sharp, searing pain shot through my skull. The world tilted. Then everything went dark. I don't know how much time passed before I woke up. My body ached, my limbs heavy as if they weren't mine. I was lying on the floor. Sarah was gone. I pushed myself up, dizziness threatening to pull me back down. The room was silent except for the faint sound of something dripping. I turned toward the mirror. The mask was gone. I exhaled shakily, relief flooding my chest. My hands reached up, fingers brushing against my bare skin. But the moment I saw my reflection, my breath caught. It wasn't me. It looked like me, but the expression was wrong. Too still. Too perfect. The lips slowly curled upward into a grin. Then my reflection whispered in my voice, "You're wearing me now." Story number 3. The wrong apartment. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of something faintly metallic like rust or dried blood. The lights in the hallway flickered as I kicked off my boots, shaking off the snow. The heater was humming softly, and everything looked exactly as I had left it. My coat draped over the chair, the half-empty coffee cup on the counter, the pile of unopened mail by the door. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I locked the door behind me, exhaling into the quiet of my apartment. It had been a long day. The snowstorm had turned the entire city into a frozen maze, and my commute had stretched into an unbearable nightmare. I just wanted to eat something, take a hot shower, and sleep. But as I set my bag down, a cold sensation crawled up my spine. My eyes drifted toward the living room. The couch cushions were slightly off. The TV remote wasn't where I usually kept it. And the worst part, the lamp by the window was on. I never left that lamp on. A slow, suffocating dread settled in my stomach. My fingers twitched toward my phone, but I hesitated. Maybe I was just tired, my mind playing tricks on me. I shook off the unease and headed to the kitchen. The cold tile pressed against my feet as I grabbed a glass from the cabinet. Then I heard it, a soft creak from the hallway behind me. I froze, my grip tightening around the glass. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible over the hum of the heater, but I knew what I heard. Someone or something had shifted in the shadows of my apartment. I turned slowly, my heart slamming against my ribs. The hallway leading to my bedroom was dark, the door slightly ajar. I always left it closed. I took a step forward, pulse hammering in my throat. "Hello?" My voice came out weak, barely above a whisper. Silence. A new wave of unease settled over me. I glanced toward the front door, considering just leaving. Getting out, going to a friend's place, calling the cops. But something inside me, some stubborn, irrational need for certainty, made me stay. I stepped into the hallway, each breath feeling heavier. My fingers grazed the light switch. The bulb flickered before flooding the narrow corridor with pale light. My bedroom door stood open now, wider than before. I had the overwhelming sense that if I walked inside, something would be waiting for me. I swallowed hard, forcing my feet forward. The wooden floor creaked under my weight. The air was colder here, unnaturally so. I peered inside my bedroom, breath caught in my throat. The bed was made, too neatly, the kind of perfection I never bothered with. But that wasn't what made my blood turn to ice. It was the closet door, wide open, and I never left my closet open. A single thought took root in my mind, a whisper against my skull. Someone is still in here. I took a slow step back, my body screaming at me to run. But before I could move, a voice, low, calm, and chillingly familiar, broke the silence. "You're in the wrong apartment." The breath in my lungs turned to stone. The voice had come from inside the closet. Every muscle in my body locked up. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Something rational. Something that wasn't what I already knew deep down. And then, slowly, too slowly, a hand slid out from the darkness of the closet. It gripped the edge of the doorframe, long fingers curling against the wood. My breath hitched. The skin was pale, too pale, and stretched tight over the bones. The fingers twitched, adjusting. Then another hand appeared, pressing against the floor. Whoever or whatever was inside was crawling out. I took a shaky step back. The voice came again, softer this time. "You don't live here." I turned and ran. I nearly slammed into the hallway wall as I sprinted for the front door, my hands shaking violently as I fumbled with the locks. My ears were ringing, my pulse deafening. The room behind me felt like it was expanding, stretching toward me, the shadows reaching out like grasping fingers. I yanked the door open and stumbled into the freezing night, snow hitting my skin like needles. I didn't stop running until I was outside my building, panting, my breath forming frantic clouds in the air. I grabbed my phone with numb fingers, dialing my best friend's number. It rang once, twice. Then I looked up, and the world tilted beneath me. My apartment window. The light inside was still on, but there was something else. Something standing at the window, watching me. I couldn't make out a face, just a figure, impossibly still, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It shouldn't be there. I took a step back, my pulse hammering against my skull. The call connected. "Aiden," I gasped. "There's someone in my apartment." Silence on the other end. Then a low exhale. "You don't live there anymore." A chill spread through my body, deeper than the cold around me. "What are you talking about?" My voice cracked. Aiden's breathing was shaky. "You moved out 6 months ago, remember? After..." The line cut. I stared at my phone, my vision blurring. Number. That wasn't right. I had just come home from work. A movement from the window made my stomach drop. The figure inside was waving. Then the light flickered off. I ran. I don't remember much after that. Only the feeling of the snow beneath my feet. The wind tearing through my lungs, my mind screaming at me that none of this was real. But I knew what I saw. I never went back to that building. Never tried to retrieve my things. When the landlord called me the next day, confused about why my door was wide open in the middle of a snowstorm, I told him to throw everything away. I don't care what was in that apartment. I don't care what I left behind. But sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear the voice whispering, "You don't live here." Story number 4. The shadow under my bed moved. I always sleep with a small nightlight on. Not because I'm scared of the dark, but because my apartment is old and the shadows here don't feel right. They stretch too long, curl at the edges like fingers, and sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear they move. Last night, I woke up freezing. The radiator was on, but the air in my room felt like ice. My blanket had slipped off the bed, so I reached down to grab it. My fingers brushed against the fabric, but something felt wrong. The floor was too cold, almost wet, and the air underneath my bed was heavier. That's when I saw it. The shadow under my bed wasn't mine. I froze. The dim glow from my nightlight stretched my shadow across the floor. But beneath my bed, there was another, darker, thicker, and it moved. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, my mind playing games with me in the half-awake haze. But as I watched, the shadow shifted, slowly, deliberately, like something beneath me was stretching, waking up. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to move, but I couldn't. The air felt heavier now, pressing against my chest like a cold, invisible hand. My instincts screamed at me to get up, to run, to turn on every light in the apartment. But I couldn't even breathe. Then I heard it. A whisper. Faint, like wind slipping through cracks. but it came from under the bed. I didn't understand the words at first. They were slow, distorted, almost like they were being spoken underwater. Then, as the whispering grew clearer, I realized it was my own voice. "Are you awake?" A sharp, paralyzing chill shot through my body. It was me, my own voice coming from the darkness beneath my bed. I swallowed hard, forcing my breath to stay steady. My fingers clenched the sheets. If I ran, if I moved too fast, would it grab me? The whisper came again, mimicking me perfectly. "Are you awake?" My vision blurred. My body was screaming at me to move, but I couldn't. The shadow beneath my bed twitched, just a slight, unnatural jerk, like a broken marionette adjusting its limbs. I forced myself to sit up. My body felt sluggish, like the air itself was holding me down. Every movement was a battle against something unseen. I had to check. I had to know. Slowly, I leaned over the side of the bed, inching my face toward the floor. The closer I got, the colder it felt. My breath came out in shallow gasps. My fingers trembled as I gripped the mattress, steadying myself. And then, I saw them. 2 hands. Pale, stretched thin, gripping the floor beneath my bed. They weren't attached to anything, just fingers, twitching against the wooden floor, pulling something closer. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing beneath my bed was crawling toward me. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I stared in horror as the hands pressed against the floor, slowly pulling up a face. It was mine. A perfect, hollow-eyed version of my own face peered back at me from the shadows. The lips stretched into a smile, too wide, too sharp. Its eyes were black voids, empty and endless. I choked on my breath, scrambling back. The thing's head tilted, still grinning. Then in my exact voice it whispered, "You're in my bed." The light flickered. I ran. I didn't stop to look back, didn't grab my phone, didn't think. I threw open my bedroom door and sprinted down the hall, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. But as I reached the front door, I hesitated. The apartment was too quiet. The heater wasn't humming anymore. The wind outside had stopped. Even the city beyond my window was silent. And then, from behind me, a creak. From my bedroom. I turned my head slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me not to. The bedroom door was open. I had left it open in my panic. But the lights were off now. My nightlight, the one I always kept on, was out. And in the darkness, standing just inside the doorway, was me. Or something that looked like me. It stood there, perfectly still, its head tilted at that unnatural angle. Its mouth stretched into that impossible grin. Then in my own voice, it whispered, "You didn't check the closet." A cold wave of terror crashed over me. My closet. My eyes flickered to the half-open door in the bedroom, swallowed in shadows. And then, a hand reached out from inside the closet. Not mine. Not the thing in the doorway. Something else. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the feeling of fingers, cold, too long and impossibly strong, gripping my ankle. I woke up this morning in my bed. The room was normal. My nightlight was on. The heater was humming softly. The storm outside had calmed. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was just a nightmare. But when I got out of bed, my breath caught in my throat. Because underneath my bed, perfectly pressed into the dust-covered floor, were 2 handprints. Story number 5. I got a text from my future self. The first message came at 2:47 a.m. My phone buzzed against my nightstand, pulling me from a deep sleep. I groggily reached for it, expecting some late-night spam or a wrong number. But when I saw the sender, my fingers went numb. It was from me. I stared at the screen, confusion twisting in my half-awake brain. My own number had texted me. That wasn't possible. My phone was right here. I hesitated before opening it. The message was short. Do not leave your apartment tomorrow night, no matter what. A cold shiver ran down my spine. This had to be a prank. But how? My phone had no unknown logins, no signs of hacking. It was my own number, sent at a time that hadn't even arrived yet. I tried to shake off the unease and went back to sleep, convincing myself it was some weird glitch. But the next morning, when I checked my phone again, the message was still there. And there was another one. If you leave, you will die. My stomach twisted. My first instinct was to block the number, but how do you block yourself? I tried calling my number from a different phone, but it just went straight to voicemail, my own voicemail. I spent the day in a haze, the warning playing over and over in my head. I wanted to ignore it, but some deep, primal fear had lodged itself in my gut. What if it was real? By evening, I had almost convinced myself it was all some elaborate joke. But then, at exactly 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. He will knock 3 times. Do not open the door. I jumped at the sound of the notification, my skin crawling. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the heater, the wind howling against the windows. The snowstorm outside had gotten worse, covering the streets in thick layers of white. I put my phone down and exhaled shakily. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. Then at 6:05 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I froze. One knock. My pulse roared in my ears. I stared at the door, my breath locked in my chest. 2 knocks. My phone buzzed violently on the table, but I couldn't move. 3 knocks. The apartment fell into a suffocating silence. My fingers twitched toward my phone, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the door. The knob didn't turn. There were no footsteps. Just waiting. My phone buzzed again. I forced myself to look. He knows you're inside. Do not respond. A sharp, suffocating dread settled in my stomach. I slowly backed away from the door, careful not to make a sound. The wind outside howled, pressing against the windows like something desperate to get in. Story number 5. I got a text from my future self. The first message came at 2:47 a.m. My phone buzzed against my nightstand, pulling me from a deep sleep. I groggily reached for it, expecting some late-night spam or a wrong number. But when I saw the sender, my fingers went numb. It was from me. I stared at the screen, confusion twisting in my half-awake brain. My own number had texted me. That wasn't possible. My phone was right here. I hesitated before opening it. The message was short. Do not leave your apartment tomorrow night, no matter what. A cold shiver ran down my spine. This had to be a prank. But how? My phone had no unknown logins, no signs of hacking. It was my own number, sent at a time that hadn't even arrived yet. I tried to shake off the unease and went back to sleep, convincing myself it was some weird glitch. But the next morning, when I checked my phone again, the message was still there. And there was another one. If you leave, you will die. My stomach twisted. My first instinct was to block the number, but how do you block yourself? I tried calling my number from a different phone, but it just went straight to voicemail, my own voicemail. I spent the day in a haze, the warning playing over and over in my head. I wanted to ignore it, but some deep, primal fear had lodged itself in my gut. What if it was real? By evening, I had almost convinced myself it was all some elaborate joke. But then, at exactly 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. He will knock 3 times. Do not open the door. I jumped at the sound of the notification, my skin crawling. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the heater, the wind howling against the windows. The snowstorm outside had gotten worse, covering the streets in thick layers of white. I put my phone down and exhaled shakily. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. Then at 6:05 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I froze. One knock. My pulse roared in my ears. I stared at the door, my breath locked in my chest. 2 knocks. My phone buzzed violently on the table, but I couldn't move. 3 knocks. The apartment fell into a suffocating silence. My fingers twitched toward my phone, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the door. The knob didn't turn. There were no footsteps. Just waiting. My phone buzzed again. I forced myself to look. He knows you're inside. Do not respond. A sharp, suffocating dread settled in my stomach. I slowly backed away from the door, careful not to make a sound. The wind outside howled, pressing against the windows like something desperate to get in. Then, a shadow passed beneath the door. I clamped a hand over my mouth. It wasn't the shape of feet. It was longer, like fingers were dragging across the floor. My phone vibrated again. He will try to sound like me. Tears burned in my eyes. The air in the room felt heavier, pressing against my skin. I could hear it breathing now. Then, a voice. "Hey, it's me. Open up." It was my voice. Exactly my voice. The same tone, the same pitch, like I was on the other side of the door, whispering to myself. I squeezed my eyes shut, my whole body trembling. "I know you can hear me." I couldn't move. The weight of fear pinned me to the floor. "Open the door, please. You're making a mistake." The voice cracked like it was pleading. I forced myself to look at my phone again. Another text had come through. "Whatever you do, do not let him in." I bit down on my lip hard enough to taste blood. The thing outside the door shifted, its shadow stretching unnaturally beneath the gap. Then the doorknob turned. I let out a strangled gasp, my back slamming against the couch as I scrambled away. The lock held. The voice outside sighed. "Fine," it said, still using my voice. "I'll come back later." The shadow melted away. Silence. I sat there shaking, my eyes locked on the door. My phone vibrated one last time. "Do not sleep. He will come back at 3:14 a.m. I didn't move from the couch the entire night. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every gust of wind sent my nerves screaming. The hours crawled by like a slow, suffocating nightmare. At 3:14 a.m., my apartment grew unbearably cold. The wind outside stopped. The world went silent. And then, a whisper from inside my apartment. I never saw it. I didn't look. I couldn't. But I could feel it. Standing behind me, leaning close, breathing against my neck. Then in my own voice it whispered, "You should have opened the door." The world spun. My vision blurred. Everything went black. I woke up the next morning on the floor, my body aching like I'd been dragged. The front door was still locked. My phone was lying beside me, screen cracked, and there was one last message waiting for me. "Next time I won't knock." Story number 6. The Man in the Red Coat. I first heard about the man in the red coat when I moved to this town. It was a quiet, snow-covered place where everyone knew everyone. But there was one thing they never talked about unless you pushed them. The Valentine's night visitor. The stories varied, but the warning was always the same. If you hear a knock at your door at exactly midnight on February 14th, do not open it. If you see a man in a red coat standing outside, do not speak to him. Do not let him in. At first, I thought it was just some small-town superstition. a ghost story meant to scare kids. But then I started hearing the whispers. Real fear in people's voices, a warning beneath their words. They weren't joking. I didn't believe it. Not until that night. The snowstorm had gotten worse. The streets were empty, blanketed in thick white, the streetlights barely visible through the swirling frost. I was home alone, curled up on my couch watching TV. The heater hummed softly, and the only sound was the wind rattling against the windows. Then at exactly midnight, someone knocked. My body went cold. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not rushed, not hesitant, just waiting. I sat up, staring at the front door. My heart pounded in my chest. No one should be here, no one. The knock came again. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers, checking the security camera feed. The app loaded slowly, my breath catching in my throat. Then the image appeared. A man stood at my doorstep. Tall, thin, perfectly still. His face was obscured by the shadows, but I could see the details that mattered. He was wearing a long red coat. A sharp chill crawled up my spine. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. Someone lost, maybe seeking shelter from the storm. But then I remembered. No one was supposed to answer. I turned off the screen and gripped my phone, forcing myself to breathe. The knock came a third time. Then a voice. Software friendly. Too calm. "Can you let me in?" My stomach twisted. The words weren't threatening, but there was something wrong with them. The way they slithered through the air, reaching me even through the thick walls. The voice was too smooth, too practiced. I stayed silent. The man didn't move. I could still see his figure through the frosted glass, just standing there, waiting. Then, his head tilted. A slow, deliberate movement like he was listening. "I know you're in there," he said. A sharp pang of nausea twisted in my gut. I clutched my phone tighter, my fingers slick with sweat. The town's warning echoed in my mind. Do not let him in. Do not answer. The silence stretched. Then, footsteps, but not away from my door. They circled my house. I barely swallowed the gasp that rose in my throat. I stood frozen as the footsteps crunched through the snow, moving from my front door toward the side of the house, past my windows. I ducked into the hallway, heart pounding. My breath came in shallow gasps. The footsteps stopped. Then another sound. Tapping. Right against my living room window. I didn't dare look. "I just need to come in for a minute," the voice murmured. "It's cold out here." The tapping turned into scraping. A slow drag of fingers against the glass. Something deep in my bones told me. If I looked, I would see something I wasn't meant to. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, swallowing the urge to sob. My phone screen was still open to the security feed. I glanced down at it with shaking hands. The front porch was empty. My stomach flipped. My heart slammed against my ribs. I hadn't heard him leave. Then, a soft exhale, right behind me. I whipped around, my body slamming into the wall. My eyes darted wildly around the dark hallway. Empty. The voice whispered, too close. "You shouldn't have checked." The lights flickered. The temperature dropped so suddenly, my breath came out in thick clouds. The walls groaned, the air in my apartment growing heavy, pressing against my chest like invisible hands. Then, another knock. But it didn't come from the front door. It came from inside my bedroom. Tears burned in my eyes. I forced myself to move, step by trembling step, toward the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. My fingers shook as I reached out. Something knocked again, from inside my closet. My mind screamed at me to run. My instincts begged me to leave. but my hand moved on its own, pushing the door open. The closet door was open, and there, standing in the dark, was a man in a long red coat. His face was my face, but wrong. The eyes were too wide, the smile too sharp, the skin too stretched over something that wasn't human. His head tilted in that unnatural way, watching me. Then in my own voice, he whispered, "Next year, you'll knock too." The lights went out. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up the next morning on the floor, my apartment untouched, the door still locked. The only thing out of place was the red coat draped across my couch. I burned it. But I know it doesn't matter, because next Valentine's night, at exactly midnight, I will be the one knocking. Story number 7. My dead ex sent me a gift. The package was waiting for me when I got home. A small, neatly wrapped box sitting on my doorstep, dusted with fresh snow. No return address, no delivery notice, just a plain red ribbon tied into a perfect bow. I hesitated. I hadn't ordered anything. My name was printed on the tag in bold, elegant handwriting. Something about it felt off, but curiosity got the best of me. I bent down, picked it up, and stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The warmth of my apartment did little to chase away the cold knot forming in my stomach. I set the box on the kitchen counter and stared at it. My fingers hovered over the ribbon before finally pulling it loose. The paper peeled away easily, revealing a simple white box beneath. I lifted the lid. Inside was a smaller velvet box, the kind used for jewelry. Nestled beside it was a note. My stomach clenched as I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was familiar. "Happy Valentine's Day, love. Did you miss me?" The breath caught in my throat. My hands shook as I reread the words. The signature at the bottom made my vision blur. Daniel, my ex, who had been dead for 3 years. A sharp chill crawled down my spine. This wasn't possible. Someone was playing a cruel joke. I stared at the note, my pulse hammering against my ribs. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation. Maybe it was an old letter, misplaced and somehow sent to me now. Maybe someone was messing with me. But then I noticed the date in the corner. February 14th, this year. A suffocating unease settled over me. My fingers trembled as I reached for the velvet box. Slowly, I flipped it open. Inside was a ring. Not just any ring. My ring. The one Daniel had given me on our last Valentine's together. The one I had thrown into the river after his funeral. My stomach lurched. My hands turned ice cold. I knew for a fact that this ring was gone, lost to the depths of moving water. But here it was, sitting in a perfect little box, as if it had never left me. A deep, gnawing dread rooted itself in my chest. I stumbled back, my breath coming in short gasps. My mind screamed at me to throw it away, to burn it, to get rid of it. But my body wouldn't move. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. With shaking fingers, I reached for it. An unknown number. A text. "Put it on." My breath hitched. I stared at the screen, the words blurring as panic squeezed my lungs. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't think. I didn't know what to say. My mind kept repeating the same impossible truth. Daniel was dead. Another message appeared. "Don't you still love me?" The room suddenly felt colder. The air thickened, pressing against my skin like unseen hands. I forced myself to move, to do something, anything. My fingers closed around the ring. It was warm. I swallowed back bile and ran to the front door, yanking it open. The snowstorm outside had gotten worse, the wind howling as if the night itself was alive. I looked up and down the street. No footprints, no signs of delivery, just empty, endless white. My phone buzzed again. "Why are you trying to leave?" A choked sob caught in my throat. The light in my apartment flickered. A gust of cold air curled around my ankles, slipping under the doorframe. I turned back towards the kitchen, the box still open on the counter. The ring was gone. Panic clawed at my chest. I spun around, my mind racing. It had been there seconds ago. I hadn't touched it, hadn't moved it. But now the velvet box was empty. Then I felt it. A slight pressure around my finger. I looked down. The ring was on my hand. I let out a strangled scream, yanking at it, trying to rip it off. It wouldn't budge. The metal burned against my skin, searing hot despite the freezing air. My vision blurred. My breaths came in ragged, desperate gasps. Then, another message. "I told you to put it on." A sharp pain stabbed through my chest, deep and unrelenting. My knees buckled. The air around me thickened, humming with something unseen, something watching. Then the whisper, software familiar, right behind me. "I missed you." A scream tore from my throat as I whirled around. No one was there, but the light flickered again, the shadows stretching unnaturally long against the walls. The room tilted. My head pounded. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The light steadied. The air warmed. The weight pressing against my chest lifted. I gasped for breath, collapsing onto the floor. My body trembled, the sheer silence almost as terrifying as the presence that had filled the room moments ago. Slowly, I forced myself to look at my hand. The ring was gone. The box, the note, the wrapping, gone. It was as if they had never been there at all. But as I sat there, pulse still erratic, my phone buzzed one last time. A final message. "I'll see you next Valentine's." Story number 8. The Woman in the Mirror. I first noticed something was wrong when I was brushing my teeth. It was late, past midnight, and the snowstorm outside had turned the world into a silent white abyss. The pipes groaned as I turned on the faucet, the old apartment barely holding together in the cold. I leaned over the sink, rinsing my mouth, and when I looked up, my breath hitched. My reflection hadn't moved. I stood frozen, the taste of mint lingering on my tongue, watching the mirror. My own face stared back, eyes hollow, expression blank. My stomach twisted as a slow, creeping dread crawled up my spine. I lifted my hand slightly. My reflection did the same. Relief flooded me. I had imagined it. But just as I turned to leave, something made me stop. My reflection was still smiling. A cold wave of nausea rolled through me. My lips were pressed into a thin, tense line, but in the mirror, my reflection's mouth was curled up at the edges, just barely, just enough to be wrong. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Slowly, carefully, I stepped closer. The air around me felt heavier, thicker, as if the space between me and the mirror had stretched into something unnatural. Then, without thinking, I lifted my right hand. My reflection lifted the left. A scream built in my throat, but I couldn't make a sound. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The reflection didn't move. The wrong smile stretched wider, the corners of the mouth peeling back too far. Then in the silence, she whispered, "I see you." The lights flickered. The world tilted. My vision blurred at the edges, nausea curling in my stomach. I turned and ran, yanking open the bathroom door and stumbling into the hallway. My breath came in ragged gasps as I slammed the door shut behind me, my fingers trembling. I forced myself to think. My mind raced through logical explanations, sleep deprivation, stress, a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew. That thing in the mirror wasn't me. I needed to leave. Now, as I reached for my phone, a shiver ran through me. The apartment had gone unnaturally quiet. The heater had shut off. The wind outside had stopped howling. It was as if the whole world had gone still. And then, a slow, deliberate knock on the bathroom door. The breath in my lungs turned to stone. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I hadn't locked the door. I stood paralyzed, every muscle in my body locking up. The knock came again, softer this time. Closer. Then a whisper. My own voice. "Let me out." A shudder crawled up my spine, ice sinking into my bones. The doorknob rattled. I bolted. I didn't stop until I reached my bedroom, slamming the door shut and locking it behind me. My entire body shook as I backed against the wall, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My phone was still on the nightstand. I grabbed it with shaking hands, scrolling through my contacts. I needed to call someone. Anyone. But just as I was about to dial, my eyes flickered to the mirror on my closet door, and my stomach dropped. I wasn't in it. The room was reflected perfectly, my bed, my dresser, my nightstand. But I wasn't there. Then, slowly, the closet door in the reflection creaked open. Something was inside. Something that wasn't me. I turned. The real closet door was shut. My body screamed at me to run, to get out, to leave the apartment behind. But I couldn't move. My eyes were glued to the mirror, my pulse hammering so loud I could barely hear my own breathing. Then in the reflection, she stepped out. My own face, but wrong. The same too wide smile, the same hollow eyes. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, watching me with a sick, twisted amusement. She lifted her hand, slowly, deliberately, and then she waved. The lights flickered violently. A cold gust of air swept through the room, and suddenly the closet door behind me creaked open. I turned. Too slow. The last thing I saw before the light went out was my own hands reaching for me. Everything went black. I woke up on the floor. My head pounded, my limbs felt heavy, and for a long moment I couldn't remember where I was. The air was warm again. The heater was back on. The wind howled outside like nothing had ever happened. Slowly, I pushed myself up, my fingers digging into the carpet. My whole body trembled as I turned toward the mirror, and my blood turned to ice. She was still there, standing in the reflection, watching me. But I wasn't looking into the mirror anymore. I was looking out. Story number 9. The snow angels were moving. I first noticed them on my walk home. It was late, past midnight, and the fresh snow blanketed the empty streets in an eerie, untouched white. The town was quiet, the kind of unsettling silence that comes after a heavy snowfall. My breath curled in the freezing air as I pulled my coat tighter around me, my boots crunching softly against the icy sidewalk. Then I saw them. Snow angels. At first, they looked normal, scattered along the field beside the road, their shapes pressed into the untouched snow. They were spaced out in no particular pattern, some overlapping, others perfectly formed. I assumed kids had played there earlier, laughing and throwing themselves into the snow. But the further I walked, the more uneasy I felt. There were too many. They stretched across the entire field, dozens, no hundreds of them. All identical in shape, all perfectly pressed into the snow. No footprints surrounded them. No signs that anyone had walked through the field at all. A sharp chill that had nothing to do with the weather crawled up my spine. I picked up my pace, refusing to look at them any longer. Maybe the wind had smoothed out the footprints. Maybe there was a logical explanation. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw one move. I stopped mid-step, my breath catching in my throat. I turned slowly, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The field was still, the snow undisturbed. But I knew what I had seen. One of the snow angels had shifted. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move. My apartment was only a few blocks away. I just needed to get inside, shut the door, and forget about this. Then behind me, a soft crunch. I turned so fast I nearly slipped. The snow angels were closer. My stomach twisted. My mind scrambled for logic, for reason. But deep down, something primal screamed at me to run. Another crunch. I saw it this time. The snow moved. Not all of them, just one. The imprint of a snow angel at the edge of the field shifted like someone was sitting up. The arms pressed deeper into the snow as if they were pushing themselves upright. A strangled breath escaped my throat. I stepped back, my body refusing to obey the screaming panic in my head. The angel's shape twisted, the impression in the snow stretching unnaturally as if something beneath the surface was shifting, crawling. Then, from the silence, came the worst sound I had ever heard. A whisper, low, distant, echoing across the frozen night. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt them. A cold dread seeped into my bones, locking me in place. The snow angels were wrong. They weren't pressed into the snow. They were underneath it. I ran. I didn't care if I slipped, if I fell, if I looked insane. My legs burned as I sprinted toward my apartment, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The streetlights flickered as I reached my building, yanking the door open and slamming it behind me. I didn't stop until I was inside my apartment, my back pressed against the door. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb. I opened the window blinds, just enough to peek outside. The snow angels were right at the edge of my building. My stomach lurched. They had moved. I knew it. I could feel it. Then one of them vanished. The imprint in the snow collapsed, the shape disappearing as if something had pulled itself free from beneath the surface. My throat tightened. My entire body went cold. I stepped away from the window, heart pounding. The apartment was silent. The air was thick, suffocating. Then from the hallway outside my door, a soft crunch, like footsteps in the snow. But I was on the third floor. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment. My breath hitched. The knock came again, slow, deliberate. Then from outside the door, a whisper, faint, delicate, curling through the silence like frost. "Let me in." I didn't move, didn't breathe. The door handle twitched. Then slowly, my phone vibrated in my shaking hand. A text. "You brought them home." A sharp breath tore from my throat. I backed away from the door, my entire body trembling. The apartment felt smaller, the air pressing against my skin like invisible hands. Then my phone buzzed again. "Don't go to sleep." A cold wave of nausea crashed over me. My fingers curled around my phone as I slowly turned back toward the window. The snow angels were gone. The field was empty. Just untouched. Perfect snow. But something inside me knew. They weren't gone. They were inside. Story number 10. The Valentine's Party That Never Ended. I first noticed the house on Valentine's night, buried in a thick layer of snow at the edge of town. The road had been nearly deserted, the storm turning everything into a quiet, frozen wasteland. But the house was alive. Music spilled from the windows, a soft, distorted melody from an old gramophone. The warm glow of golden light flickered through lace curtains, casting strange, shifting shadows against the snow. Laughter echoed from inside. Muffled voices, clinking glasses, the sound of a party in full swing. but the house had been abandoned for years. I stopped in the middle of the street, my breath curling in the freezing air. I had walked past that house dozens of times. The windows had always been dark, the paint peeling, the porch rotting beneath years of neglect. But tonight it was alive, like a scene from another time. My stomach twisted. I should have walked away. I should have ignored it. Instead, I stepped closer. The laughter grew louder as I reached the gate, the wind carrying the scent of something sweet. Champagne and roses, perfume and candle wax. The music was strange, old-fashioned, like something out of a 1920s ballroom. It crackled through the cold night, slightly offbeat, like a record stuck in an endless loop. I didn't realize I had stepped onto the porch until the wood groaned beneath my boots. My fingers hovered over the doorknob. The air here felt thicker, warmer, almost inviting. Then the door creaked open. I hadn't touched it. The warmth hit me first. It shouldn't have been warm. The house had no working electricity, no heat, no life. But inside, a grand chandelier bathed the foyer in golden light. The walls were lined with deep red wallpaper, untouched by time. Guests in elegant, old-fashioned clothing glided through the hall, drinks in hand, laughter spilling from painted lips. It was beautiful. It was wrong. No one noticed me at first. They danced, whispered, and drank in their perfect little world, oblivious to the snowstorm raging outside. My fingers tightened around the doorframe. The music was still playing, the same song on repeat. The exact same laughs echoed through the air, looping in a way that made my stomach twist. Then, a woman in a flowing red gown turned toward me. Her smile stretched too wide. Her eyes were too bright. She raised a champagne glass in my direction and whispered something to the man beside her. Then they all turned. Every guest, every perfectly dressed man and woman in that house turned to look at me. A sharp pulse of panic crashed through my body. I took a step back, but the warmth pressed against me, pulling me forward. My breath came out in short, frantic bursts. The guests were smiling, their faces frozen in expressions too polished, too unnatural. Then, the woman in red stepped toward me. "You're late," she said, tilting her head. "We've been waiting." My mouth went dry. I think I have the wrong house." Her expression didn't change. The guests behind her didn't blink. "Nonsense," she purred, reaching for my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "Stay a while, you've already come inside." I tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. The room shifted, the walls warping slightly, the chandelier flickering. The air pressed against my chest, heavy and suffocating. The music didn't stop. The laughter didn't stop. I yanked my hand free, stumbling back toward the door. The guests watched. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Then the woman whispered, "You can't leave." I turned and ran. The moment my boots hit the snow, the warmth vanished. The house went dark. The music stopped. The laughter cut off mid-note. I turned, gasping for breath. The house was empty. No lights, no guests. Just an abandoned husk, dark and silent, sagging under the weight of years of decay. My pulse roared in my ears as I backed away, my breath sharp and uneven. But just before I turned the corner, I saw it. A single window on the second floor. A woman in red stood there, her lips still curled into a smile. I didn't wait. I didn't look back. I ran. The next morning, I told a coworker about the house, about what I had seen. He went pale. His hands trembled as he rubbed his arms. "That house," he whispered. "That house burned down in 1974. My stomach dropped. They were having a Valentine's party, he continued. A chandelier fell, set the whole place on fire. No one made it out. I swallowed hard, my skin crawling. Every year people hear music coming from there, see lights. But the thing is, his voice dropped lower. No one ever sees the guests. I didn't say anything, because I had, and they had seen me. Story number 11. The Whisper in the Snow. The first whisper came when I was walking home through the snow. The wind had picked up, swirling around me in thick gusts, but I still heard it. A voice, soft and distant, calling my name. I stopped mid-step, my breath curling in the freezing air. The street was empty. The snow-covered houses were dark, their owners long asleep. The only sound was the howl of the wind pushing against the telephone wires. Then I heard it again. A whisper, right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped, my boots sinking into the fresh snow. Nothing. Just the endless stretch of white and the dim glow of the streetlights flickering in the storm. My pulse pounded against my ribs, but I shook it off, telling myself it was the wind, just the wind. I kept walking, but the whisper followed. The snow was deep, nearly up to my knees in some places, making each step harder. The cold bit at my skin, turning my fingers stiff even beneath my gloves. But the worst part wasn't the cold. It was the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every few steps, I swore I heard it. A voice just at the edge of the wind. The words were garbled, distorted, like someone speaking from underwater. My stomach twisted with unease, but I refused to look back again. I just needed to get home. My apartment was only a few blocks away now. I could already see the faint glow of my porch light through the snowfall. The moment I reached it, I would slam the door shut, lock every bolt, and bury myself under my blankets until morning. But as I reached my building, I froze. There were footprints in the snow. Leading up to my door, my breath hitched in my throat. I hadn't passed anyone. No one had been walking ahead of me. And yet, there they were. Deep, uneven footprints, trailing through the untouched snow, stopping just at my doorstep. Then, they disappeared. There were no retreating steps, no signs of anyone leaving. Whoever had made them had either walked inside or never left. A sharp pulse of fear rooted me to the spot. The whisper came again, closer this time, right in my ear. I turned so fast I nearly lost my balance. My throat tightened, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Nothing. The wind howled, carrying the whisper away. My whole body trembled as I forced myself to move, to reach my door, to get inside. I fumbled with my keys, my fingers stiff with cold, and shoved the door open, slamming it behind me. Silence. The warmth of the apartment did nothing to ease the ice in my veins. My heart pounded as I locked the door, checking it twice, 3 times. My breath came out shaky, my skin prickling with an unsettling awareness. Something wasn't right. I turned slowly, scanning the darkened apartment. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The couch, the kitchen, the hallway leading to my bedroom. Nothing out of place. No signs of anyone being here. And yet, I still felt it. The whisper. It hadn't been outside. It had been inside. A shiver crawled up my spine. My hands clenched into fists at my sides as I stepped forward, slowly, cautiously. The air in the apartment was thick, wrong, like something unseen was watching me from the corners of the room. I swallowed hard and forced myself toward my bedroom. I needed to sleep. I needed to convince myself it was nothing, that I had imagined it, that my brain was just playing tricks on me in the cold. But then my phone buzzed. I jumped, my nerves shot, my heart hammering against my ribs. My hand shook as I pulled it from my pocket. A message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. The words made my stomach twist. Don't listen to the whisper. The phone nearly slipped from my grasp. A tight, suffocating fear curled around my chest. My throat went dry as I stared at the screen, my mind scrambling for an explanation. The whisper came again. Only this time, it was coming from my closet. I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. The closet door was slightly open. Not enough to see inside, just enough to let the darkness slip out, curling at the edges of the dim room. The whispering didn't stop. It was soft, almost gentle, like someone was murmuring just beneath their breath. The words were familiar. I strained to make them out, but my brain screamed at me to stop listening. I should have run. I should have left. But I took a step closer. The whisper turned into laughter. Not loud, not sudden. Software delicate, amused, like I'd just fallen into its trap. The closet door creaked open. A rush of ice-cold air spilled out, hitting me like a slap. My vision blurred, the room spinning as the laughter grew. My legs buckled, and I felt it. Something behind me. Something leaning close. The last thing I remember before the lights went out was a voice, low and smiling against my ear. I told you not to listen. Then, everything went black. I woke up in my bed. My clothes were damp from melted snow. My phone was on the nightstand, the screen cracked, the message from the unknown number gone. For a long time, I lay there, my mind replaying everything. The footprints, the whisper, the thing in the closet. Maybe I had dreamt it. Maybe it had all been in my head. But as I sat up, I heard it again. The whisper. Not from the closet. Not from outside. From under my bed. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. But tell me, have you ever experienced something unexplainable? A whisper in the dark? A shadow where there shouldn't be one? Share your horror stories in the comments below. I'm dying to read them. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss what's lurking in the shadows. More terrifying stories are waiting for you. Click on the videos appearing on your screen now, if you dare.